answer on that.
And can you talk a little bit about your platform and the ideas that you plan to bring to the table?
Okay, so there's a lot of things, obviously, but I'm focusing this campaign on 4 key things, and that is infrastructure, education, economic development, and neighborhoods. Starting with infrastructure, I think that we have a problem, obviously, with our infrastructure. That is the number one complaint that everyone has, is that the roads are a disaster. Yeah. So the problem, however, is that all mid-sized cities in America are having this problem all throughout the country. And the problem is that this is such an enormous expense to adequately fix our infrastructure problem. So when we chartered the city in 1837, the city was going to maintain residential roads, meaning they would keep them up, essentially. But the problem is roads don't last forever. And so what happened, though, is, as of late especially, politicians would run on the idea of, we're going to fix your roads. And what they ended up doing is they're taking money out of the CIP and putting them into the residential roads. We were never supposed to be funding the reconstruction of residential roads the way we set our budget up.
Now, what's the CIP?
The capital improvements plan.
Okay.
So our infrastructure budget is the CIP.
Okay.
So, but what we came up with is a plan to do our residential roads without taking money from the CIP. And so you can either do a concrete road or an asphalt road. And the difference, however, concrete lasts 40 years, whereas asphalt lasts 30. It costs about $1 million to pave 1 mile of road, and per 1 mile is roughly 100 residencies. So what you have is 1 million over 100 over 40, breaks down to about a $200 cost, and you get a brand new, fully finished residential road with curbs all throughout the city. And so one thing that our current councilman has discussed is a plan on how we can, because he has had a similar type of proposal, and he as far as the cost, a way that we can lower that is by we can move the budget around to slash the cost of the assessment, but it's what essentially it is. It's not a tax per se. It's an assessment, and so it goes onto the property. And so if you move to Sylvania or whatever, you move to a city or move to a place where we have not gotten to you yet to do your residential road, it's not going to follow you. It's a property assessment. So I think that's it's an innovative way to reconstruct our infrastructure. It's bold, but I think we need bold action on such a big issue.
All right. And you mentioned I think education,
yes,
and
economic development, neighborhoods. A lot of people come and try to push back that you can't do anything on education, and to those people, they're wrong. I mean, I think that's a pretty lazy excuse that the city government can't do anything on education. I mean, just this past year, we have already done a lot on education, and starting next year, we're going to have universal pre-K in the city of Toledo. That was a project initiated by the mayor of Toledo. So, I mean, there's plenty to do on education. We can do CDBG funds to fund after-school programs and different organizations that are going to benefit students. San Antonio did this thing where they funded universal pre-K through a sales tax. We do ours now through private funding. A lot of cities do funding for community college for their graduates, their school district, through private funding. So, I mean, we could maybe do a sales tax to do that for college. I mean, there's a lot of different things we could work on to move around. I mean, there's a lot of different things we can do. As far as the funding and the curriculum, obviously I'm aware that I can't go in and say this is what the kids are going to study at TPS or we're going to increase your budget. I mean, that's a state issue. But, I mean, there's a lot that can be done.
Some people, when they vote for local elections, they look at the slate, as it's called, and they just vote by the slate of endorsed candidates. You yourself described progressive. We know progressive candidates don't always fit into the establishment of the Democratic Party. You won't be on the slate. Why should somebody that's a Democrat take a chance on you?
Well, I don't.
Not go by that slate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the thing is, I think people, what it really comes down to is people need to make the best decision for the community. I've tried really hard to put my ideas out there, put my name and reputation out there, my history, why I believe that I'm capable of doing this job. And what I'm not doing is speaking on anybody else on why they are a good or bad candidate. I'm running my race because I believe that I'm capable of doing the job. So as far as, you know, the party endorsed somebody else, obviously I'm not thrilled about that. I mean, and I don't really have much else to say beyond that. I mean, it was unfortunate, and I was kind of disappointed about it, obviously, but I mean, it is what it is, you know. It's just another obstacle, and an obstacle I intend to overcome.
All right. Okay. You're one of the younger candidates, if not the youngest person running for city council this time around. Some people have been critical of that and say that, you know, you may need more real world experience. What would you say to those critics?
Well, honestly, I think we've seen a lot of people in office all over the country that are old and don't do anything. So, quite frankly, so, you know, I think there's a lot of people that have said that to me. I've not heard that ever from a voter, which I think is good. But people are always going to have criticism. I think you're never going to be prepared for public office until you're there. I think you're never going to be able to, you know, fully be ready for the obstacles in a job like that. And I think there's people that have learned that are in office now, that they were unprepared for all the obstacles that you face. Personally, though, I think I'm as prepared as you can be. I've lived here for 23 years. I mean, I know my community, I know my neighbors, I know the businesses around here. This is a district that represents the University of Toledo, where I went to school and earned a degree, and that's 20,000 students there that need a voice.
Oh, wow. So District 5 represents the University of Toledo.
Yes.
I don't think I realized that.
Yes.
So all those students at the University of Toledo are District 5 voters.
Well, it wraps around on the very southern point around Dorr Street. I believe it cuts off President's Hall and either Ottawa East or West. So, but the vast majority of the campus, though, it is in District 5. So I think that I'm as prepared as you can be. I've interned in various offices, so I've seen how government works. I've been to meetings, council meetings regularly. I have a degree in political science. I don't know how much more prepared I can possibly be.
Or what are some things you think that are keeping more young people from getting involved and throwing their name out there and trying to run?
Well, I think there's a lot that goes into that. I think that a lot of people are turned away by, I think it's pretty easy to see the obstacles just from the outside looking in, as far as the way things have always worked and always ran. And there's a lot of pushback when somebody who's not included in that tries to break into it, and they're shut out early. And so I think a lot of people do probably try to come into this and try to do something like this, and they're turned away because of reasons like that. I think the pay on city council is another. I don't think anyone that's starting their career wants to come in and to a job that makes $27,000 a year and start a family on that kind of salary. But this is something I've always wanted to do. I'm sure that I can figure out my finances later. My priority right now is helping the people of the city of Toledo.
Toledo City Paper, I'm not sure if you read the anonymous Johnny Hildo article, talked about the ambition.
Blind ambition.
Blind ambition, that's correct. And, you know, talked about how some candidates have blind ambition and how they may try to start off on city council, but their goal is something different as a career path. What would you say to that?
My ambition is clear as day. There's no blind vision here. You know, I've lived here my entire life, and I've always been interested in government, and I've studied this since high school. And I mean, I know this community. This is something that I've planned out and thought about for years in the making. So to say that this is some blind ambition and I'm just going against the system and see what happens, that's not the case. I'm running to win. I like my chances. I am ambitious. I'm not ashamed of that. Maybe to a fault sometimes, but I'd rather be ambitious than not be. And I think it requires ambition to get things done.
This is Great Black Swamp Talk. Remember, swamp up or sit down so we all may prosper. Peace.
Follow Golden Rule Mac on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter
for more interviews on Toledo City Council candidates. And don't forget to vote September 10th.